Jazz comes in to me, says, "Big lad, I need you to do me something." I said, "What is it you need to do?" He says, "I need you to go and pick up Matthew McConaughey." So I went and organised a black taxi. "Hi, is that Matthew?" "Sure is." "Is that Mikey?" Great chat. Into the taxi, broke open the Grey Goose. If you have a pub here and a pub here, but yet nobody goes to this pub, it's that guy Gerry behind the bar. He's brilliant. He tells us all these stories. And guess what? We stayed on for another one. Unfortunately, we had a tragedy where one of our door staff was shot dead. The terrorists were bombing the bejesus out of Belfast. The buses were stopped and searched. But we still went out. It made people of us, you know. It made us realise that, you know, there's more to life. I failed my 11 plus. I failed my driving test first time. And I failed university and nearly was kicked out. But didn't make me a failure. I grew up with guys who took the wrong road. I could have taken the wrong road. Some of those guys unfortunately aren't with us anymore. Some of those boys ended up inside jail. So my parents were a real rock for all of us as kids. Surprised you remember stuff like that. You're bringing tears to my eyes. Wow.
All right, guys, what's the crack? Welcome back to Best of Belfast, the podcast that celebrates Northern Ireland and the incredible people in it. We're joined today in the co-host chair by the wonderful Gerry White, Jawbox Gerry himself. Great to see you.
Good to be here.
Leaving me hanging.
Oh, sorry.
We're all new with the lingo here. It's a whole new setup. It's very, very exciting. We've got the wonderful Michael Stewart in with us here today. Michael Stewart is a bar expert. He's a hospitality guru. He is the bar CZAR. And we talk about all sorts of things, ranging back from hospitality during the Troubles, all the way through his incredible career, meeting Matthew McConaughey, and a whole bunch of other very interesting stuff. So yeah, hope you really enjoy it. And that's it. That's all I have to say. Cheers.
You've done that before.
I have done that before. Where were you born and bred? Where'd you
Okay, so why I've applied for this position is you've got my CV.
Yeah, tell us about your criminal record while you're at it, would you?
Oh, well, when you heard when I was born and bred, you probably will listen to the criminal record. Shankill Road.
Unreal.
Proud to say that. And a lot of friends from there, made a lot of great friends, and we all went to the boys' model school. So we got on the special buses and went up and still see those guys to this day. It's great.
That's class. So any formative kind of moments from the childhood, anything that stands out?
Yeah, parents. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here. You will be of an era that does not remember the Troubles.
Born
just
Good Friday Agreement, basically.
There you go.
Yeah.
Gerry and I would certainly be products of the Troubles. Take that the right way, folks. But my mother actually was born and bred in Dunleary, just outside Dublin. And she came up in the 50s and eventually married my father. And then we moved to Shankill, and you can imagine the Dublin accent and the Shankill. So there was a lot of... And then they very quickly realised, oh, no, it's okay. She's not one of them, she's one of us.
It's just the accent, there's nothing else going on.
And my parents were strong. I grew up with guys who took the wrong road. Mm-hmm. I could have taken the wrong road. A lot of us could have. And there, by the grace of God, my mother would have come out to the street corner at 9 o'clock and dragged us in. And all the boys would have said, oh, yeah, we're there, we'll stay out till 11, 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
Some of those guys unfortunately aren't with us anymore. Some of those boys ended up inside jail. Mm-hmm. So my parents were a real rock for all of us as kids. But listen, bombs going off. I won't go into this today, but the amount of explosions I witnessed as a child in the Shankill and the amount of dead bodies that I saw, it's not good for any child. And listen, you can liken that to what's going on in Ukraine at the moment as well. It's not good for any child, any person. Was it character building? Well, yeah, it was, because we came through it. And when I speak to my 20-year-old boy, Nathan, he and others like him need to know that this can never happen again. We can never go back. And that's why we need to get our government sorted out and blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But proud to say where I was from. Great parents, great character building, and great friends who are still friends to this very day.
It's great. I agree with everything you've said. I do just want to go back slightly. I was listening to something over the weekend, and did a big, massive study in America, and it was like, why do some people get addicted to drugs and other people don't? And do you know what the number one reason was? In this study anyway, I'm not saying this is the definitive be-all and end-all. It was number one response, because my mum would kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I round about the same time as Michael, but from the other side of the road.
Oh, this is good. Very good. So he cross community podcast.
Well, it's why he's sitting in that. It's why he's sitting on that side of the table.
Exactly, yeah.
And ultimately, I don't like where you're sitting. You should be sitting
Yeah.
there.
I need to be like in a third
You should be
space, a
sitting up the
moderator
middle,
role.
and you should be the umpire. And this should be the
Peacemaking.
net. The net is the peace wall, and it's advantage and love all. And
And we get it all sorted in no time at all. It's funny now you saying that you're a mother from Dunleary, because I always remember you speaking very fondly of the 40-footer.
yeah.
And I always remember
Oh
you
wow,
speaking
well
very...
done. You're bringing tears
Yeah.
to my eyes. Wow, I'm surprised you can remember stuff
No,
like
I
that.
always remember that, yeah.
Because
That's how I know you're a good. You were a good barman because you've got a memory on you, like
You got your,
people's
barman has that
details.
memory.
Yeah. So how did you guys meet?
Bob Cratchit's would have been
wow.
the first venue. I mean, I've amazing memories of Bob Cratchit's and the telephone box and the statue of Bob at his desk, but it was a bar that was way ahead of its time,
Yeah.
and you just, due to your management of the bar and the staff that was there, but you were made, even though it was a big fancy bar, there was always a warm welcome.
Who was Bob?
Who was Bob?
Yeah.
Okay. So Bob Cratchit was the Scrooge. It was the clerk in A Christmas Carol who worked for Scrooge.
Right.
So everything was themed around that. The staff wore red waistcoats, and there was a very incredible life-size dummy of Bob, which is going to be one of the stories we're talking about, sitting in the middle of the bar. Originally, I only found this out when I was halfway through my tenure at Cratchit's. The bar was going to be called The Office, and then somebody said that's very boring. It was all going to be ultra modern.
Yeah.
And then the designer said, right, what's the oldest office we can think of? And somebody said, what about that thing that Bob Cratchit sat at in A Christmas Carol?
Brilliant.
Bob Cratchit's was born.
That's awesome.
There you
Brilliant.
go.
That's a good origin story.
And then all the menu was because they were the days where you didn't have cocktails and stuff. All the menu, the food menu, which we were huge on, was, the Dodgers artful picnic basket as opposed to the artful Dodger, and all, Jacob Marley's whatever.
Yeah.
So that's who Bob Cratchit was, and I will not wax lyrical about it, but it was famed throughout the land, still is to this day. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore, or fortunately, whatever way. And the amount of stories that, when I mentioned Bob Cratchit's, they said, well, I said I was the manager. I met my wife there, I met my partner there, I met my husband there.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. There's always a story.
Yeah.
I remember doing a training course. I trained 400 door staff for SIA badges, and I was doing this particular one in a particular town, which was quite hard because all the guys were different. And only on the second day did it lighten up, and the guy says, Michael, you the guy that was in Bob Cratchit? I says, yes, I was. My mummy said to say hello. Who's your mummy? Blah, blah, blah. I said, I could be your dad. And the whole place erupted, and all of a sudden, ice broken, great course, and wonderful. So, big connections in different ways. with Bob
Yeah.
Cratchit,
That's great.
It's probably where he started thinking about his Jawbox. Possibly.
In what way?
Could have been.
Gerry's had this, I've known him forever, God bless him. And he probably had something of an inkling in his head. And then that came to the 4 years later. So he's always had this vision and dream, and he's recognised it and embraced it, and God bless him.
And I think it's also what you said earlier, Michael. I mean, it's when you're working in the environment and hospitality, you're almost enjoying it that much, and the hours are flying by. So ideas and projects that you might have had in your head tend to sometimes go by the wayside because you're enjoying doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And it was only, and I'll be honest, that I was getting to that certain age, and I said to myself, if I don't do this now, it's not going to happen. So I had to give it to go then, and that was. But I suppose it was always there to have my own brand or whatever as such, or to have something, and it would have to be within the hospitality industry, because that's an industry that I'm insanely passionate about.
Yeah.
So that, you could be right, it could have been there. But I think the other important thing about Bob Cratchit's, and as you were saying earlier, Bob Cratchit's was at its height during some of the worst troubles in the city. But it brought people together from all parts of the city.
And other bars as well,
Yeah.
Gerry. Well, sorry, in the city. There weren't that many open in the city, but, Cratchit's just because it was in South Belfast, it was just outside of the zone and all that. But,
And when you say the zone,
well, in Belfast, there was a ring of steel around the city centre. This is amazing. You had to be searched going into the city centre. Buses were stopped and searched. You had to have a physical search of your body walking through. So there's the ring of steel. The terrorists were bombing the bejesus out of Belfast and other places, obviously, and all around Northern Ireland during the Troubles. But we still went out and I remember Bob Cratchit's was busy 5 nights of the week. People never talked about recessions, even though we had one of the worst recessions ever in 1988, I think it was, right in the middle of that. And that's why I say to the kids these days in bars, you're complaining, but my goodness, you're saying it's not busy. We went through a lot worse back then. Recessions, troubles, bombing, shootings, and unfortunately, we won't talk about it today, but we had a tragedy at the door of Bob Cratchit's where one of our door staff was shot dead. And that was one of the low points in 1994. So, we did go through, and you know what? It made people of us, it made us realise that, there's more to life. So yeah, all very busy back then, and as I say, Bob Cratchit, it probably spurred a lot of people on to thinking about their own venues as well. And then we came into the 90s and the 2000s, and this explosion of new venues and Belfast nightlife, and it being the place to be.
Yeah.
When peace broke out.
Yeah. Well, it's the 25th anniversary coming up soon?
In April.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I did a program recently, and we were kind of looking at like different sectors. I think it went out on U105, and it was like looking at music and looking at hospitality and tourism, and kind of like took the Good Friday Agreement as the kind of starting point and just kind of followed the ripple. Food was very, very interesting. Starting off the Next Warehouse and Paul Rankin, and then all that kind of wave. Do you think there's something unique about Belfast? And you could take this kind of Ireland in general. Like, why is this part of the world so renowned for hospitality?
You can just kick that one off, Gerry.
I think it's the people, and we have this warmth of inviting people into our homes and into our venues, and I think it's a genuine warmth. I think it's genuinely there that we're brought up. Now, whether it was partly to do with the Troubles, and we thought we have to make that wee bit more effort to make people feel welcome whenever they come here. But I just think it's a genuine longing to make people feel welcome, and what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Because whenever I first went to England to work in a pub, and I was shocked at the whole different culture. One, people didn't buy any rounds. Everybody just bought their own drink. And if you seen somebody that had very little left in their glass, and you would go, "Are you okay there for a drink?" And they would go, "Sure, I'm not finished yet." And
there's the old saying that when the English say, "Are you going down to the pub for a pint?" That's exactly what they mean.
Yeah. That shocked me. And whenever I would have finished work and went into another pub, it was natural for me to, if there was somebody sitting at the bar on their own, and sit down and go, "Oh, how you doing, mate?" And they would go, Jesus. Now, whether that was my accent at that time, I don't know. But and then you come back home, and oh my God, there's a warmth, a friendliness, and a genuine urge to make people feel happy. I remember one time, a long time ago, going to a party after work. It was Halloween, and went home, get changed. And I suppose for me, ended up in the part of the city that I shouldn't have been in. And I was dressed, I'll never forget it, I was dressed as Dracula, and I ended up in a completely different part of the city. The party wasn't as good as I thought it would be, and I went down home and went to get a taxi, and walked into this taxi depot and asked for a taxi to Lanadine. Every head in the taxi depot turned and went, "You can't be asking for a taxi to Lanadine from here." But everybody came around and made sure I get home safe.
Wow.
So even though there was mad trouble going on all around us, people were still on the lookout for you.
Yeah. Well, 1% of the population caused 100% of the problem.
I mean, And when you went to pubs, particularly because I worked in the city centre at the time, it would have been White's Tavern, and people coming into the bar were from all walks of life. And you didn't care. It didn't enter your mind who these people were, unless they tried to start bother. Then you'd say, we're not having that here. And then visitors came, and I think there is a genuine warmth from the Belfast people and Irish people in general to make people feel welcome and to go out of your way to make sure that they have the best time possible.
Yeah.
And I think that translates brilliantly in the hospitality trade.
Yeah. It's in our DNA.
Yeah, that's.
Can you name me 3 other cities in the UK that would be similar to us? I just want to see if you come up with them.
I found Liverpool
Okay,
very
that's
good.
one of them. Keep
But
going.
also massive
Liverpool,
Irish
yeah.
connection there.
Well, this is where I'm going to come to. So
I was going
Liverpool.
to say Edinburgh,
Think of another one.
Manchester, possibly.
Okay, I'm going to say Liverpool, Newcastle, and Glasgow. Right. All shipbuilding, all manufacturing, all industrial,
Interesting.
all with Irish connections.
Yeah.
Amazing at these days, a lot of the kids coming out of university, going from school, go to Northumbria University, go to Liverpool, John Muir, go to Glasgow. They obviously go to lots of other places because they've got a similar madness to them.
Yeah.
They've got weird accents as well. because,
Absolutely.
when you have an English accent, you have an English accent. But when you're Liverpool, which is English, obviously, I know, but you're Scouser, and you're Glaswegian, and you've got Geordie, Newcastle. I think it's just an inbuilt DNA. So often I see it in Belfast when there's a tourist looking at an iPhone. I do it all the time, and I see other people. Do you need directions? Yeah, we're looking for City Hall. Okay, I'm going that way. Come with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of left, right, I'm going that way. It's in our thing. Now, unfortunately, a lot of folk in hospitality might have lost that these days, and there's maybe less of it, but it's still there essentially, and we need to get that back up and inbred into people, because the clue is in the word hospitality, hospitable, and we need to, and we are renowned for it. It's why last year, I can't remember, and hopefully this year, something 300 cruise liners came into Belfast, which represented at the time about 300,000 people probably disembarking to go and do different things, whether they go up the coast to Bushmills, whether they stay in Belfast, go Titanic, go to the pubs, shops, whatever.
Wow.
Belfast is absolutely benchmark copper fastened as a cruise liner destination.
Well, that's like nearly the entire population of Belfast getting off a ship to come visit Belfast.
Yeah, over a period of March to October, and excuse the pun, when the tide rises, all boats rise. So there's uplift for everybody, be it the bars, probably not the restaurants, maybe because they go back onto their boat for their food, but that pint of Guinness, the Jawbox Ginger and Lime, or Jawbox Ginger or whatever.
One of your 5
What?
One of your 5
It's like back in the 60s, it's like
Notice
doctor
I
recommends.
Notice I didn't say the honeycomb because of the sugar. So yeah, I mean, listen, Matthew, I would just say it's in our DNA. It's in our DNA, and you know what? You may not be very good at something, as in, you're not, IT literate or something. But if you live in Belfast, you can talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you normally know where you're going, and it's just nice to be nice.
Yeah. It's definitely like we do a lot of interviews with people who've gone overseas, and ended up doing massive things. And I always ask them, like, what superpowers is coming from Northern Ireland give you? And they always say what you just said. It's my ability to talk with people. Correct. And anybody. I can walk into a boardroom or I can walk into a bus stop and instantly I can just get on that same wavelength as that person.
And it doesn't matter what age you are.
Michael, you have been involved in, like, it feels like nearly every single bar or pub in Belfast. Like, looking through your bio, your resume here, like, it's really, really impressive. Like, from your perspective, being the bar CZAR, what makes a pub make or break? Like, what makes a pub work or what makes a pub fail?
What do you think I want to say?
No, you work away.
People. 2 ways.
Yeah.
Customer, staff. interaction.
Customer.
Absolutely. When you break that down, that's exactly what it is. It's a two-way process. It's nearly a marriage. If you have a pub here and a pub here, and they all sell pints of Guinness at, back then it was like £1.50, £2, £3. They all sell a pint of Guinness at £3. But yet nobody goes to this pub, they all go to this pub. You say, why is it? Well, yeah, the glasses are always clean in this pub and they're not clean in that pub. But ultimately, it's that guy Gerry behind the bar, he's brilliant. He tells us all these stories and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And guess what? We stayed on for another one. And guess what? We give him a £1 tip. You know? People.
Wow.
People. You can build what you want. You can build what you want. But if you don't have the people working there who believe in it, who've got passion and enthusiasm, it just becomes another pub.
Very, very
That's very
interesting.
true. And actually, when you look back, people actually attract people.
Yeah.
Just when Michael was saying there about the customers. And there's a couple of bars I went to, simply because I know who's going to be drinking on it. There's great bar staff, yes, and that's a reason for going. But some of the customers are brilliant crack.
Yeah.
And you go, you know what, I love having a pint with Joe there. And I go in and I know Joe's going to be there. And that's why I think pubs and really good bars play a massive parts of communities. And that's why we really can't afford to lose them. And during COVID, when bars were closed down, the impact of
Disaster.
maybe in the older generation, where that they would have been, and they would have went to the pub and had a wee conversation with Joe at the bar or the barman. And that might have been the only person he would have spoke to that day.
Yeah.
But that was enough for him. And when that was taken away from them, I would say we haven't even seen the worst of what the effects of those restrictions had on mental health today.
Yeah.
I think there'll still be consequences from that.
And I like how you actually talk about the older generation, because a lot of chat about COVID is the younger generation and the teenagers and everyone's on TikTok and da-da-da-da-da-da. But it was just an assault on community in general.
Oh, totally.
Absolutely. And Gerry's spot on. Sometimes the only reason a fella or a woman got out that day was to go to the pub, have a pint, have a beer and talk to their friends and whatever. And even if there's no friends, they were total loners, they end up talking to the bartender. And if that bartender was great, they would engage. If they weren't, it would just be
And you sort of, like I know when I was interviewing for any staff, in the time here or any other bars that I worked in, you sort of knew instantly right away as soon as they walked in and how they interacted with you. Because it's how they interact with you at an interview. It's how they're going to interact with a customer at the bar or whatever. And with other staff as well. So you knew even before they said anything.
So Gerry and I are just one of a breed. They just don't breed them. Like anymore,
Front of house.
They just don't exist.
Yeah, but there is like that performance element to it.
Yeah.
You know, and whether it's
a stage.
Yeah.
It's a stage, yeah.
The loud shirts, you know, it's the way you dress,
Well,
it's
I
the
wore
wee
this in
thrill.
respect of Stewart's.
I actually think it's quite understated, but I appreciate your effort. I appreciate your effort. So.
I don't know if it was intentional, but I noticed when you walked through the door, you know, you said, you know, I was at this meeting, what was it, Purple Flag? Or, you know, and Liz reading into it, but, you know, you had a couple of wee purple accents on the
Well noticed detail.
Was that intentional?
Yeah, absolutely.
Come on, look at that.
Christmas. Christmas, he's a walking Santa.
Wow.
I love Christmas. And that sort of, I decorated Common Market, which I have to say, it looked fairly impressive. And got good. And it's nice to get nice feedback. It's a bit like when you do a promotion for Jawbox and you put your heart and soul into it and somebody says, wow, look at that. You just think.
And people know. Yeah. And it shows you're passionate about what you do. If it's something that you, oh God, I can't be annoyed.
But, you know, I mean, we keep talking about age and all that. It's not age so much. I have a number of years still ahead of me, and so does Gerry. But I've less years to travel the road, if that's a nice way to put it, than I have travelled in hospitality. And I'm glad I'm at this stage of the road, because it's a lot harder, I think, starting out on the road in hospitality. But I think things will get better as a result of the fallouts. And Gerry's right, there's still more to come, I think, as a result of COVID. If we get through this cost of living crisis and we get some sort of an end to the war in Ukraine. That'll help the markets and cost of living. And all of a sudden, this time next year, April of 24, I think could be the watershed where it'll all be.
Yeah.
We're sort of back at this again, and people start loving themselves again. They'll start loving hospitality and retail, and they'll back out shopping, and that'll be a great place.
Yeah, it's exciting.
So,
Definitely is exciting. Talk to me about Matthew McConaughey.
Oh God.
Not a conversation I was expecting to have today.
No, you wouldn't have. Wow. Well, some people, you know this story, don't you?
No. I don't
No.
think so.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, long story short, he was making a movie down in Dublin called Reign of Fire. And he had a 3-day break from filming. And the foot and mouth outbreak had happened.
So I'll tell you exactly where I was at this time. I was in my bed eating jelly because I got it.
Foot and mouth? Well, there's my ignorance. This is a great hospitality quiz. I thought it was only animals could get foot and mouth.
I think we got it from a farm or something. I remember like one of childhood memories, like going into farms, and they had, like, the way I remember it was like wee special sponges you would drive over so it
That's
would
right.
disinfect your
Yeah.
tires.
Yeah, that's
You know what I mean? I don't know, but that mad.
And very quickly, how did it affect you?
Like, as you would imagine, like, actually I don't think it did get it all on my feet, but it was like mad ulcers everywhere. Like, I think even inside your throat. That's, I think, what the jelly was all about.
I mean, if that was a £50,000 question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, can a human contract foot and mouth, yes or no? I'd have lost £32,000 because I just thought it was animals. Cows.
Now, is it possible that I was only 5 years old and I thought that it was foot and mouth, and the childhood memory has merged it together?
Told you that
I
you
think
had foot and mouth.
there could have been a wee bit of a spoof
have
there.
you put your foot in your mouth? Anyway,
Matty, back
so our Matty. So Jazz, Mr. Mooney, who owned Botanic Inns, came into my office, and they're all glass. And Jazz comes in to me, says, "Big lad, need you to do me something." I said, "What is it you need to do?" He says, "I need you to go to Newry in a black taxi and pick up somebody." And I went, "Yeah, right, what?" Wham. He said, "Well, it's this guy coming up from Dublin. He has to get off the train in Newry because the trains won't come through to Belfast because of foot and mouth." And I said, "What is it?" Jazz says, "I need you to go and pick up Matthew McConaughey." And I said, "Right, okay." Matthew McConaughey, as in Matthew. He says, "Yeah." I said, "Way off. You're winding me up here." And the girls are going, I go, "Is this for real?" He says, "Yes." There's his mobile. I said, "Jazz." He says, "Go and or." So I went and organised a black taxi,
Yeah.
paid the man, went to Newry, got off the Newry train station, mobile phone, rang it, expecting Jazz to go, "Oh." I said, "Hi, is that Matthew?" "Sure is. Is that Mikey?"
That's pretty good,
And I
actually.
went, "Jazz?" He says, "No, this is Matty." I said, "Right. Where are you?" He says, "Is that you at the end of the platform?" I went, "Oh my God. Hello, how are you?" And he's with another fella who was his stunt double.
Wow.
Although he wasn't a double. A guy called Mark. Great chat. Into the taxi. Broke open the Grey Goose.
Class.
He's now at the Keelan Man. So opened up the Grey Goose with cranberry and limes, and we drank from Newry to Belfast. There you go, 3 days.
Mad.
3 days with Matthew McConaughey.
All right.
And that's where the story will end. Lovely guy.
What happens in Madison stays?
But ironically, here's a cracker. So that was 3 days. I then got on a plane and went to Cuba. I went on a fantastic trip with
You've been to Cuba?
with Havana.
I'd imagine Cuba would be a great
What
place.
a fabulous! That's an island of so many extremes. But anyway, another day. It was one of those times where there were trips, and I got this trip, and I was taken away by Havana rum. Anyway, off I went. About 3 weeks later, I'm in Dublin with 3 very good friends who own pubs, and I'm walking through a bar called Zanzibar. I don't know what it is now, but it was a very long bar that was around the quayside. And we're walking through this bar because you go out the other side and 3 very big senior publicans, bar owners in Dublin. And out of my eye, I see this group of people, and this guy turns around and says, "Mikey, got any Grey Goose?
No.
And I said, go away. Big hugs. He'd been back in Dublin and the hotel was just down the street. It was a Monday night, the place was dead. The three boys with me are going, I said, yeah, Matthew, this is Paddy. This is Paddy. Paddy. It sounds like really bad. This is Paddy, Billy, and John.
Okay, yeah.
Because they're the three. And they're going, and I says, Matthew McConaughey. Yeah, I think we know who Matthew McConaughey is. And there were other folk with them who I won't mention who they were, but there were other people who happened to be in Dublin that were A-listers. And he says, you come for? I said, no, I'm going to stay with these guys because you're a nightmare, no harm to you. And, so that was the Matthew. And listen, he was lovely. And there's a video that Kathy Donnelly, who's the HR manager at the time, has on a disc somewhere. We were doing this thing called Core Skills where we teach people all. Anyway, I said, Matty, you wouldn't jump behind the bar and pour us a drink.
Oh,
come on. Gordon's gin. And he's doing all this. It's all over the place, but we're videoing it. And so that is somewhere with Matthew McConaughey pouring drinks in an apartment bar.
You gotta dig that out somehow.
I'll find it. And the funny thing is, he had his head shaved.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people that didn't, because the movie, if you're into it, it's all this sort of futuristic stuff and head shaves and tattoos and all that. And a lot of people, and then people started realizing, Jesus, Matthew McConaughey, and he's out round Bell. I thought, oh God, the story's out there. So
yeah,
and then he went to other. Listen, he had a great time in Belfast.
I bet.
And there you go. So that's the Matthew McConaughey story.
Yeah, I mean, there's story upon story upon story of like, you know, Johnny Depp came to Ireland, had an amazing time. John, you know, who
Kelly Sellers, he was drinking it.
Mad. Mm-hmm. So you know, we know how to give people a good time.
We absolutely do.
A wee science lesson for us all here. You ready?
Yeah.
This is from the CDC in America, the Center for Disease Control.
Yes.
Hand, foot, and mouth disease is common in children under 5 years old. But anyway,
so your mummy wasn't lying.
My mum was not lying.
Wow.
But anyone can get it. The illness is usually not seriously, but it's very contagious and it usually spreads quickly through schools. So there you go. If you're ever asking who wants to be a millionaire, I demand a 20% cut.
You get your cut.
Yeah.
If there's ever a question on who wants to be, and I'm there, you will be my phone a friend.
Right,
you know,
good.
I will know that.
It's on record here.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good.
Yeah, but again, you know, I know he will have gone away, and like the man's famous, and he's this and that, whatever. But if I were bumped into him again and said to him, "Do you remember?" he would go, "Yeah, I do." Because you don't forget these things. Yeah. And he's a very connected guy. I know, a lot of people know, but he lectures once a week in Austin University or something like that.
He's like an agricultural genius, isn't
he? He gives up his time, forgets about who he is, what he is. Go on to his Instagram stuff. He's brilliant in that, and fair play to him. And I could see that in him because he was very famous then. He's even more famous now, but a great guy.
Did you read his book, or did you see he brought out a book?
I'm sure I haven't read his book.
Be worth the read. It's good. Yeah. It's called Green Lights. And
That's right.
His big thing was, it's only in the rear view mirror of your life that you realise all the red lights were actually green lights. It was the obstacles that actually pushed you forward to where you are today. Wow. I like that. Something about that, isn't it?
Brilliant.
Talk to me about your quote. Gerry and I were looking at it. The one that you sent through. We really enjoyed it. This one where we're here on earth to see each other through, not to see through each other.
Yeah.
Brilliant quote.
I believe in it because far too many of us, you know, hypothetically, Gerry White, he's got a great gym product, but like he probably didn't do it himself. He's probably had people do it for him. That's part of our mentality of what we don't sometimes like to see people doing well. So what I mean by that is I actively give up my time a lot. I sit on some boards. I do a fair bit of work with Ulster University. I sit on their business advisory forum of the business school and would help the hospitality school and stuff. Unpaid, don't want paid. It's for the new generation coming through. So what I mean is, when you're born, you're not born bad or good or whatever. You're not born a racist. You're not born whatever. You're just born, and then you develop into things. And if we can see the good in people, and you know, so in other words, instead of trying to see through somebody for their bad times, maybe that person is having a bad time. Instead of trying to see through them, help them to get them through. I said to a judge one day in court when we were going up for a license we work with a charity, Cross Community Kids, and I said to the judge, in my day we had the troubles, but today these kids have troubles. And he went,
Yeah.
I said, we had the troubles to deal with, but these kids have troubles, whether it be drugs, mental health, whatever. And part of what we do with Common Market and stuff is to help those kids in that charity get through the troubles that they have. And he liked that and the passion and stuff. So it's about not seeing through each other, but seeing each other through. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Very good. Very good.
And as you were saying earlier, because everything's so instant now.
Yeah.
I mean, back in our time, you'd stuff, you plan more and you stuff to look forward to. So there was always something ahead. But now it's just, if it's not there.
It's also, because we live in an instant world with social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, a lot of these kids or adults can put something up that they then later regret and go, I didn't mean to do that. And that's the problem with being. So if somebody puts up a really bad tweet or Instagram that's either sexist, misogynist, racist, homophobic, whatever, religious, and they think, oh, girl, I shouldn't have done that, I need to take it back. If you know that person to be a good person, you need to see them through that issue as opposed to seeing through what they said. It's maybe a good example, and that's the problem with instant world.
Yeah, I like that. If you could take anyone from Northern Ireland, dead or alive, out for a pint, who would you take them, where would you take them, and why?
George Best. I've met him. It was one of the things. He came into Bob Cratchit's for lunch. There was a manager of a bar called the Ashley Bar, which is now Cuckoo, and he was friendly with George. And ironically, my late father-in-law was friendly with George. Alec Toner was a well-known football journalist who travelled with the Northern Ireland team, etc., etc. So George, Billy rang me. He said, "Look, I've somebody come down for lunch. Can you keep a table for two?" I said, "Who is it?" He said, "I'm not telling you." George walks in, and I'm not into football. I'm a rugby guy. But you just go, wow, you're in the presence of greatness here, And he was lovely. And it was at a stage where he was not drinking alcohol. And I remember getting him a pint of Caliber.
Wow.
You won't remember that? Caliber was one of
the first alcohol-free beers.
What?
Yeah, owned by Guinness Northern Ireland. K-A-L.
It's actually a great name.
K-A-L-I-B-E-R.
Right, yeah.
Caliber, yeah. There's another story there, because they used the same tapping heads from memory. So at the same time, we had Caliber 0, and we had Furstenberg, which is something like 7%. And one day somebody tapped their own kegs. Right? Anyway, that's another day. But yeah, George was in for lunch, and I got talking to him, and I'd mentioned my father-in-law and stuff, and Alec and I have. So I would love to continue that conversation with George, and then you ask me why, just because, my goodness, so funny. I mean, like the stories he could, if he was allowed to tell you the story.
Yeah.
And what was your other part? Who, what?
Well, you already said it.
Yes.
Bob Cratchit's probably. Wouldn't it?
Yeah. So I would, I'd love to go back one day in time and just do that with him.
Sounds like this is very scripted now. Speaking of going back in time, our closing question is always the following. If you could go back in the time machine.
If I could turn back time. I don't know the rest of the words.
Go on, Gerry.
No.
Go on, Gerry.
If I could turn back time. Oh, not share. Sorry, turn back time. If you could turn back time.
To an 18-year-old version of yourself.
An 18-year-old version of myself.
Yeah, like 2 minutes of his time. What would you say to him?
Ooh. Do you mean as in something I wish I... do you mean...
Whatever way you want to take it. If I was 18-year-old you, and you were staring right at me, and you had 1 or 2 minutes.
Yeah, just be sincere, be yourself, be honest, be nice. All the nice attributes. Don't... I would also say, listen, it's okay to feel. Because it's okay to fail, because when you fail, it doesn't make you a failure. You were there. You were there at the Institute of Hospitality at the Common Market. You were speaking.
Yeah.
Bill Woolsey was speaking. I was speaking. Jean-Christophe Novelli was speaking.
Nice French.
And
That was impressive.
je ne parle pas français. Parlez-vous français?
Sure
So
Jean-Christophe
Jean-Christophe was speaking. I was speaking with Bill.
Yep.
Jerry spoke on his own.
Doesn't need a wingman.
And a lady, sorry, whoever, I can't remember. It was one of the ladies from Tourism NI was speaking. So
and this was for all hospitality.
So there were like
students.
400 students there from Ulster University, Belfast Met, Derry, Newry, everywhere. And I started off by saying, I failed my 11 plus. And for those of you who don't know what the 11 plus in, it's either the GL or the AP.
AQ,
whatever. Yeah, AQE.
maybe?
Yeah. So I failed my 11 plus GR AQE. I failed my driving test first time, and I failed one of my sections in first year at university and nearly was kicked out. But didn't make me a failure.
Mm.
You get up, you move on, and you go on. So that's what I would say to an 18-year-old, because a lot of them take a failure as a failure as them being a failure.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And too many kids are influenced these days by social media, and that can come and that's resulted in mental issues and, unfortunately, tragic issues and stuff. So I would just say, be yourself, and also just remember, in this big world, just because you fail at things does not make you a failure.
It's a good way to
Very
end.
true, yeah.
Great way to end. Michael, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
That was good fun.
Yeah, it's absolute pleasure.
Mr. White, thank you.
No, pleasure.
Unbelievable. Oh, Gerry has something for you. That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a thank you,
Oh, great.
and I know it's your favourite.
Thank you. The last dribble was squeezed out of it at Christmas there
right.
with ginger.
No, I
and
knew you were very fond
no,
of
you're very
pineapple,
kind.
so-
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's a great product.
Awesome.
So
And that is us, glad.
thank you, Jerry.
Incredible.
That was good.
He's brilliant at what he does now, he really is.
You could talk forever.